So congressional Republicans are trying desperately to get back at Obama over his immigration executive order. We just discussed how some Republicans at the state level are now suing President Obama. Of course, they're suing at the congressional level as well, but that's different. They're suing at the congressional level over Obamacare, even though they don't have a case. But so what did they do? What did they come up with to threaten President Obama over his immigration order? They decided they're going to threaten to raise taxes on the poor and the middle class. So when they don't like what he does in one area, their way to get back at him is to say, well, now we're going to hold the American people hostage. The majority of the American people, the poor and the middle class. And remember, Republicans tell us they're the party of tax cuts, except when they're fighting to raise your taxes. The Week reports, quote, when President Obama announced his executive action on immigration, enraged Republicans promptly took vengeance on all the goodies for the working poor, cutting them out of the budget deal and proposing a raft of permanent tax cuts for corporations alone worth $440 billion over 10 years. Cowed Democrats, led by Senator Harry Reid, were about ready to go along, prompting a decidedly justified outcry from liberals. Obama then threatened a veto, and the negotiations broke down entirely. So, what they're referring to is the Earned Income Tax Credit, which affects the poor and the middle class, and they were going to gut that. But also, at the same time, turn around and say, while we screw over the middle class and the poor, let's give more goodies to corporations and the rich. They still want to cut corporate taxes as they come after you. The Week continues, quote, a few takeaways from this. First, it's yet another reminder that Republicans don't care about the national debt. Conservative carping about the debt is 100% of the time a rhetorical cudgel deployed with utter cynicism against programs they dislike for other reasons. When the topic is food stamps or unemployment insurance, they demand offsets to pay for them and say we're broke. But when it comes to dropping plane loads of money on corporations and rich people, Republicans will casually blow a $500 billion hole in the 10-year budget without blinking. That's exactly right. And if you look at the history of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and how they are with the deficit, you'll see it's a stone-cold fact that the Democrats are better with the budget deficit. Now, understand, there's a lot of progressives who say that's not even necessarily a good thing, because the more you spend publicly, that means the better off the private sector is. So having very low deficits isn't always necessarily a good thing, especially if you believe in Keynesian economics or if you believe in the new school of MMT. But nonetheless, just taking the conservative mindset of we always love low deficits, well, then in that case, you should be voting for the Democratic Party. Because the Democrats, I mean, who was the only modern president to balance the budget? It was Bill Clinton. He left a surplus. There were annual deficits all the time, and then he came in, left us with a surplus. And George W. Bush, of course, was historic with his deficits. He's the first one. He brought us $1.4 trillion deficits. And never mind the fact that he basically doubled the national debt. And remember, the national debt and the deficit are two separate things. The deficit is annual. The national debt is cumulative. So, again, if you're a true conservative Republican, let's say your main issue is deficit reduction, well, then you should be voting for Democrats, because historically, the Democrats in the modern era are much better with it. Reagan had record deficits, H.W. had record deficits, W. had record deficits, Clinton cleaned up the mess, and now Obama's cleaning up the mess. Obama more than cut the deficit in half since he's been in office. So remember that, and the Week is making that point perfectly clearly as well. They're saying, look, the Republicans are just lying to you when they say they care about it. But the even more important aspect of this conversation that I want to bring up again, because to me this says it all, is the myth that the Republicans care about cutting taxes. They don't. You know how they message themselves in every election, not only as the party of fiscal responsibility and low deficits, but the party of tax cuts. They make a very simple argument. They come out and say, well, all I want the American people to understand is that I want more money in your wallet so you can decide how to spend it, and Washington does not decide it. You can decide on your own, gosh darn it. That's an argument they make every election season. But they're lying to you. Because again, if you look at the actual data in the sense that you look at the policy proposals from the Democrats and the Republicans in the modern era, the Democrats are always for cutting taxes for more people. Don't take my word for this. This is, you could read this on any news website that has given you an analysis of the Republican tax proposals during any election season versus the Democratic ones. I mean, take John McCain versus President Obama. CNN Money did a great analysis of this. Come to find out, President Obama cut taxes for 90% of the American people. All the middle-class people, all the poor people get a tax cut under Democratic policies. I'll repeat that. 90% of the American people get a tax cut under Democratic policies. You know who gets a tax cut under Republican policies? At best, the top 10%. But usually it's more like the top 1% or the top 0.1%. So when they talk about how they're the party of cutting taxes, they don't mean for you. They mean for the billionaires. They mean for the rich. They mean for Wall Street. They mean for corporations. Period. If you're an investment banker, yes, go ahead, vote Republican, and you'll have more money in your pocket. If you make over $250,000, or today more like over $400,000, sure, vote Republican, you'll have more money in your pocket. But if you make less than $250,000 and you're voting for Republicans thinking that they're going to cut your taxes, you are flat out factually incorrect. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a matter of looking at facts, looking at data, looking at numbers, looking at policy proposals, and acknowledging the reality that is right in front of your face. Put the rhetoric aside, put the fact that the media doesn't know how to talk about this aside, put the fact that this has been drilled into your head incorrectly for the longest time aside because the Republicans have messaged so effectively. It's simply not true that they are the party that cares about cutting your taxes. In reality, the Democrats are the party of deficit reduction, and the Democrats are the party of cutting taxes for the middle class and the poor, period. And this story today proves it because the Republicans aren't even trying to hide it anymore.